All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the Everything College Football Podcast. Today I'll be doing my preview and prediction for NC State versus Clemson. Top 10 ACC Showdown College Game Day will be in Clemson, South Carolina. Tigers 7-point favorites. I was unable to find the over-under early on for this game. 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time on ABC. Clemson leads the series all-time 59-29-1, and they've won 8 of the last 9 with NC State winning last year in overtime at home. Previewing this NC State offense, Devin Leary, pretty inconsistent start to 2022. 890 yards, 9 touchdowns, 2 picks, 64% completion rate. Some pretty good numbers there from Leary. But, nowhere near the quarterback he was last year. 286 yards per game, 35 to 5 TD to INT ratio. It's been a strange start to the season for this offense. NC State did not look great against Texas Tech. Leary only 121 passing yards. Against ECU in the season opener, 51% completion rate, 211. A lot of bad throws. He was great on third down in that game, but other than that, he had a bad pick, a lot of misfires. Overall, just a strange performance so far to start the season. Of course, he's pretty flawless against UConn and Charleston Southern, but, not really too worried about that. 8 of his touchdowns have actually came in those 2 games. But, looking at the 2 other opponents that they faced, 2 other quality opponents, that is, he's not been great, and I'm not sure why he's just underperforming, because he's capable much more. He looks kind of like the quarterback he was a couple seasons ago when he completed, I think it was in 2019, he completed like 48%. He was just not very good a couple years ago, and he's much better than that, so he certainly needs to step up, perform better. Got 2 great receivers to get it done with, Devin Carter and Thayer Thomas. These guys have been phenomenal, throughout the years, very productive year after year, and no different to start the season. Thomas, 15 grabs, 217 yards, 2 touchdowns. He leads the team in all those categories. Carter not far behind with 9 grabs, 117 yards. He found the end zone once. Other than that, though, no one else has really got involved. The 2 running backs are the next 2 leading pass catchers. Darryl Jones, the Maryland transfer, only 8 grabs for 66 yards. Christopher Toddley, he's a versatile guy, I like to get involved. Trent Penix, of course, he's still out for a couple more weeks at tight end. That's a big loss there. And then Keon Lesiani, 9 grabs, 82 yards, and a touchdown. Just, outside of Carter and Thomas, no one else has really gotten involved, and that certainly doesn't help this passing attack that's already kind of, reeling right now. So these guys certainly need to step up. They're capable. Carter, slot guy. They like to move Thomas around too, 6 foot, 195 pounds. They got 2 very similar pass catchers there. I do like what we've been getting out of the running game, though. Demi Sumo, Jordan Houston, these guys are running hard. They're not running great, only about 157 yards per game, but they're certainly not from a lack of effort. These guys are really putting it together on the ground. I think Houston, more importantly, he was expected to start the year as the lead back, and then Sumo kind of took over, 252 yards and 3 touchdowns. He's been really good, so that's pretty good when the guy that they really expected to be the number 1 is kind of falling down to the number 2 here because someone else emerged. That's certainly impressive stuff right there. The offensive line, has been above average so far. Of course, they replaced Ikem Ekwonu to the NFL, and Anthony Belton, he's massive. He's a great replacement for him. Chandler Zavala, a grad transfer there. He's a veteran. You got to look at Grant Gibson on this interior at center. He's a veteran. It's been around a long time. Belton 6'6", 330. He's a very ideal replacement for a guy like Ekwonu, who was a bookend tackle last year. These guys are certainly capable. They got some size. They got plenty of veteran presence on this unit. They do have some young guys, though. 2 sophomores on this O-line, at right guard, Dylan McMahon being the other one, and Belton, of course. So this offensive line, they have a massive task. They have to handle. Clemson defensive line, they're nasty week in, week out. That's all you're going to hear is how good they are. But I think more importantly is even when they do have time, what kind of mistakes will Leary make? Because so far it's not been great. He was not phenomenal in that week 1 game, and then they did not do much downfield one, but against Texas Tech, now they're playing a defense they can really get after it. Of course, they just had an embarrassing game themselves in the secondary. But, Leary doesn't seem to be a very confident quarterback right now. The running game, again, only 157 yards per contest. Not ideal from NC State. They're still averaging 36 points per game. And then they were on the field a lot last year, too. And, it was a tough go against Clemson last season. They were on the field about 99 plays, and they still, I think, ended up with less than 30 points. So, NC State offense right now, I'm very iffy on them. They're not performing at the level they expected them to starting off. Coming into the season, I didn't think that this would be an issue. I thought Leary would be much better than he has been. I thought the ground game would also be producing a little bit better clip. So it's going to be an interesting game. They certainly have their hands full, but they're more than capable. They can certainly turn it on and flip the script in a hurry, and they can get things going. Look at the Clemson offense. DJ Uyunglele coming off a career best effort against Wake Forest. 371 yards, 5 touchdowns. It's probably the second best time I've ever seen him throw the football. That game against Notre Dame 2 years ago was highly impressive, and this one's right up there with it. He was very confident. It was some point in the second quarter I was just like, yeah, this defense is going to be in for a long day. Can the offense keep up? And because, I was like, this is going to be it. Clemson, they're going to lose this game because the offense cannot perform. And that did not end up being the case. They had some solid balance. More importantly, they're just making it work through the air. A lot of great plays from his pass catchers. They all stepped up. Bo Collins, Antonio Williams, the freshman, Joseph Nagata, Davis Allen made some good receptions as well. These guys all stepped up. Made his job much easier. Bo Collins, he now has 4 touchdowns on the year on top of his team high, 218 yards and 13 receptions. Very impressive effort there. Brandon Spector as well. E.J. Williams is still on the roster. He's only got 5 reps, but he's more than capable. And then Jake Bringstool, he had 10 receptions this year. So they're starting to spread it out a good bit, but I was very encouraged by the playmaking by his receivers because week 1 against Georgia Tech, that was not the case. Uyunglele I thought was really good. There's a lot of drops, a lot of bad plays by his pass catchers, and they're starting to come first circle now. So that's very good for this Clemson offense. Will Shipley, 353 yards, 7 touchdowns, a bigger back. Great effort on that 1 touchdown run against the Demon Deacons. The team ended the game, 188 rushing yards, 4.8 yards per carry this year for this rushing attack. It's been kind of up and down ground game for Clemson, but I think overall that they are certainly capable of accomplishing a lot. Phil Maffa, Kobe Pace, number 2 backs, they haven't really done much on the stat sheet, but they've been able to get involved. Shipley, number 1 back, though, this is a slice and dice runner despite being, 214 pounds or so, 205 rather, he's a bigger back, it doesn't look like he's 205. He's, got a lot of muscle, pretty thick body, I like Will Shipley, though. He's a slice and dice guy, can really carve you up. The Clemson offensive line, they're certainly coming into their own as well. The interior was a big concern for me coming into the year. Will Putnam, he's a senior there. Walker Parks, Blake Miller, a regular freshman, rather, true freshman, at right tackle. Jordan McFadden, outside of that, there's not many veterans here. McFadden, I like him at left tackle. He had a really good year last year. He's starting off the year pretty well also. But Marcus Tate, he's another one of those, youthful guys on the interior. And they have a big task when it comes to defending this NC State defense we'll get to in a second. Overall, this is a unit that, top to bottom, you look at it and it doesn't scream incredibly talented, especially on the O-line, but they are certainly capable of 44 points per game right now. It's really good. Remember that first half against LA Tech, they were not too good. Same with Georgia Tech, they were not too phenomenal. They really turned it on the second half of these games. Same could be said about the Wake game. So, they start kind of slow, but they're really starting to find a stride. Obviously, they've only played really one real opponent in Wake Forest. They've kind of beat up on some of these lower-level guys. But 44 points per game is a really impressive mark for this unit that was just not good last year one bit, only averaged 26 points per contest. If you look at, in conference, it's a lot less than that. So, very encouraging stuff from this offense. We'll see if DJ can stay hot and if this offensive line can continue to protect and, let the ground game pick up some balance. Look at the NC State defense. They've been flat-out elite against the run this season, and it starts with a lot of size and a lot of depth on this defensive front. You look at Davin Vann, Corey Durden. He's a guy that knows to really frees things up for other guys. Joshua Harris, he's about 325 pounds. Savion Jackson's an athletic playmaker. These guys top to bottom. You can throw C.J. Clark in there as well. Now, you're going to hear a lot about Clemson's D-line, how deep and nasty they are. These guys aren't far behind. These guys are really do a lot of cleaning up. Only 327 rush yards allowed on the season for the 4 games. They completely stonewalled Texas Tech, who had 54. ECU had a good runner too, but they only ended the night with 116 yards on the ground. So overall, they've been pretty flawless. I love what this defensive line does for this football team. They really set things up, and it really makes the job easier for the nation's best linebacking group, in my opinion. Drake Thomas, he really stepped up last year when Peyton Wilson and Isaiah Moore got hurt. But the past couple of seasons, Wilson and Moore were the leading tacklers for this football team. And right now, Thomas, 24 stops is a team high. Wilson and Moore, 6th and 8th, respectively, on the team in tackles. Jalen Scott actually has more than both of them. So they're very deep at linebacker. They have a lot of playmaking. That's something you're really going to see in this game. All 3 or 4 of those guys, you're going to hear their names called a lot. Front 7-wise, this is a great unit. Of course, Clemson's going to get all the attention, but these guys are not bad. They were phenomenal last year against the run. Savion Jackson's already got 3 tackles for loss. They got a lot of guys they can rotate in and out here. And just overall, they really stopped the run very well. I think they have a pretty good matchup against this Clemson O-line, especially on the interior. It's a 3-3-5 they roll out, of course. So I guess it's front 6. I think I called it a front 7. But, you look at the back end. This is a secondary that was one of the nation's best marks in terms of opponent completion rate allowed. It was a very low number, around the 54% or, 52.5 rather. I think that was the nation's best. If not, it was definitely in the top 5. And they returned everybody. 100% of the snaps from last year were back in the secondary. Includes Tanner Engel, who probably should have went to the NFL. He was a first-team all-conference. Shaheem Battle, he's only going to continue to get better. Redshirt sophomore. Derek Pitts. Tyler Baker-Williams, back in 2020, they really struggled in the slot. And then one thing I talked about last year is how would Tyler Baker-Williams do in that position, and he's continued to grow. He was pretty good last year, and he's been great so far. He had 4 pass breakups a season ago, and he's really molding into a full-fledged star there at that position. Secondary, they're very talented. They got plenty of ball hawks. These guys communicate very well. 7 picks for this team. Baker-Williams leads the way. Aiden White, a sophomore, he's got 2 as well. I like Jakeem Harris. He's been around for a bit. So top to bottom, this is an NC State defense that probably does not get enough love after this game. If they play very well, that's going to be one of the top units that's talking about nationally. They're just loaded with experience and playmaking, and I think that just getting back 100% of their snaps, like I said, that's just very important. You add that to the 3 linebackers they have and the depth on the D-line. These guys are very nasty. This is no joke. This is one of the nation's top 3 or 5 defenses. NC State, I think they match up pretty well in this game against the Clemson offense. Look at the Tiger defense. They're absolutely stacked on this defensive front. Tyler Davis, Brian Brissy, Ruka Horo on the interior, absolutely loaded. You're going to have a lot of guys that are playing on Sundays on this defensive front. Then Miles Murphy and KJ Henry coming off the edge. They only have about 8 sacks in 4 games. From a production standpoint, they're not eye-popping or anything, but the presence is certainly felt every single play. Your offensive line feels it. Your quarterback definitely can feel it. Whether you hit him or not, he knows it's coming. The run defense has been staggering, only allowing 79 rush yards per game. Later in that game against Wake Forest, the Demon Deacons started to kind of churn out a couple, positive runs that really helped out their offense. Considering how aggressive they were, it was nice to see them pick up some yards. But overall, 39 attempts, 110 yards for the Demon Deacons on the ground. Flawless effort. Only had 6 rushing yards was LA Tech, and that was the only game they allowed a rushing touchdown in so far this year. Stonewalled Georgia Tech as well. You're not going to be able to really run the ball in this game. It's going to be big for NC State, their offensive line. They got some big physical guys, but they've not been running the ball too well. So, obviously kind of outmatched here. They didn't do much on the ground against Texas Tech. East Carolina, a lot of hard running was the reason why they had success. It's going to be a tough ask here. You're going to have to protect the football as NC State. They're going to really have to win it through the air, which is certainly possible because the secondary's proven to be a liability. Coming into the year, I was kind of worried about how they would play. I don't think I talked about it enough against the Wake Forest game, really, because I didn't think they would play this much man coverage, and that didn't work. Pride was getting, he was having troubles. More importantly, Nate Wiggins was getting cooked the entire afternoon. Sheridan Jones, I don't think I heard his name called enough. I don't even know if he played in that game, honestly, but Nate Wiggins had a long afternoon. It's a young unit. Andrew McCumba is probably their best DB. He's a sophomore at safety. He's a versatile guy. And it kind of shows you that's where the loss of Brent Venables kind of comes into effect because they would not get out of that man coverage. They were so worried about getting pressure on Sam Hartman. They wanted to have numbers in the front 6 or 7 and let their corners play one-on-one. It did not work all afternoon. Wiggins did come away with the game-winning pass breakup, so he did. He stayed true, and he did not he did not break, he didn't fold. Neither did this entire defense. They really had some issues because I thought the D-line was really good. Trenton Simpson made some good plays in coverage. He's obviously the team's leading tackler as well. Plenty of speed from him. I feel like if you want to get pressure, that's the guy that blitz from the middle of your defense because he is phenomenal. Barrett Carter as well, kind of come into his own. Him and Jeremiah Schroeder, young guys at linebacker. I don't think that you're going to see NC State be as aggressive as Wake Forest was when it comes to throwing the football. The Wake Forest passing attack, it's a level ahead of the Wolfpacks. That's certainly there, but with how Clemson played last week, I would attack those corners one more. That game from last week certainly will still be on their mind, so I'd go out there and test them right away, see if they're up for the challenge. But I don't expect them to be as man-heavy as they were because I think they can get to Devin Leary with their front 4. I do like the NC State O-line, but I don't think they're overwhelming by any means. They're definitely better than the Wake Forest O-line, which was not terrible. They had their great moments. They had their bad moments. A pretty inconsistent average game from Wake Forest, but especially, if that front 4 struggles to generate pressure, though, then they could be in the same boat as last year. They shouldn't, but we'll see what happens because NC State's certainly capable. Should be a great game, good opportunity for Wes Goodwin's unit to bounce back against NC State. I think they'll do a pretty good job against the run, but how they hold up, in man, and how they hold up on first and second down because, NC State's going to want to be in third and short. Wake Forest, they don't have to worry about that. They're just winning downfield so much. Didn't matter what the down and distance was. Looking at team comparisons, the Quarterback, NC State, Devin Leary, I'm going to give him the edge, even though he's been a little inconsistent to start the year. I still think he's better than DJ Uiagalelei at this moment in time, even though DJ's red hot coming off that game against Wake Forest. Of course, that's not exactly a good secondary he was facing, but very encouraging to see that. I'm going to give Will Shipley in this Clemson backfield the edge. The NC State guys, they've really been running hard. Demi Sumo, Jordan Houston, they've been running tough. And neither team's really overwhelming in the backfield, but I'm going to give Will Shipley the edge there. Wide receiver, I think Clemson's much deeper than NC State, but the two starters, and Thayer Thomas and Devin Carter, I think for NC State, those guys for years have been long, outstanding producers, so it doesn't really make much sense to pick NC State here, but those two guys definitely give me the edge over the team that has the more depth. Usually I don't do that, but I do think this duo well established in the ACC. Offensive line, I'm going to give it to the Wolfpack. I like Anthony Benton, Grant Gibson. He's one of the top centers in the country. Still have plenty of concerns about the Clemson unit. It's got a true freshman starting. D-line, NC State's not far behind with Clemson. They're going to get the edge every single time you see a team comparison this year. They're just too nasty, too stacked there, but NC State, they're not far behind one bit. Linebacker, 3 great players, 4, even 4 really, for NC State. So I'm going to give them the edge at linebacker. Trent Simpson's phenomenal, but they also have 2 young guys there starting for the Tigers in the middle. And in the secondary, pretty unanimous here. A lot of experience, a lot of leadership in the back end of a unit that's still playing at a high level. 56% opponent completion rate to start the year. They're going to be in the same boat they were last year on the 52% mark by the end of the season. In Clemson, they're coming off a thrashing in the back end where the top-notch aggressiveness paid off for Wake Forest. I'm going to give the edge to Clemson here. BT Potter, he's actually really emerged as a pretty reliable kicker. Showcased that last week after some early bumps in his career. I'm going to give the edge to Clemson on the special teams mark. Final thoughts on the prediction on this game. I think for NC State, don't get dominated up front. Bring the physicality. The offensive line, they've been really shaky this season. I think they're certainly capable of much more. I think it'll be a pretty average game from them, but I do think that the D-line for NC State will make their presence felt. They're really deep. They're big. They're nasty. They're going to really slow down this run game for Clemson. DJ Uiagalelei, you need to keep playing with confidence. When he's playing like that. This is a former 5-star, number 1 ranked quarterback. This guy in 2020 had 2 starts where he was phenomenal. Last year was obviously very disappointing. This year he's starting off the right way. And I think for the defense, don't sit in man coverage. Obviously, it didn't work last week. And obviously, it's a much different passing tack, too. But Devin Leary is a guy who was the top quarterback in the conference last season, behind Kenny Pickett. He was one of the top 3 QBs in the conference. And, obviously, he started not too great this season. Don't sit in man coverage and let your front 4 do some damage. I think they certainly will. I'm going to take a low-scoring game, 26-20. I'm going to pick NC State to win this game. It's really hard to do that because the Wolfpack have been very inconsistent on offense, but I think this defense is very underrated. I think big plays for Clemson are going to be hard to generate. The defensive line is going to introduce themselves to college football. They're going to force a turnover or 2. It's really going to set this offense up, score some points. I don't think either team's going to be able to run the ball one bit. I think both of them will be under 110 yards easily. Very low-scoring contest. More of a boring, grinded-out type of game. Just like it was last year, Clemson, they were on the field for 99 plays and still didn't allow 400 yards. That's just elite work. So I think you're going to see much of the same this time around, but I do think NC State will etch this one out. And I picked them to win this game in the preseason, so I'm going to stay true to that. I still think this team, they're leaving a lot on the field. They're much better than what they've been performing in the first 4 weeks. So if they're going to be right or I'm going to be wrong, they're going to get heavily exposed. They're going to find the edge here in this one. They're going to start to showcase what they can do. So I'm going to take NC State to get the job done in Clemson. It's going to be a great game. It should be close as it always is between these two in Clemson. Game day will be in town. Make sure you guys tune in. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.